Okay, so I thought I would do uh, one more video and see what kind of discussions was. I had a few different topics in mind, um, but this one in particular, I had revisited the material that I'd put together a long time ago because I got real interested in the story of Judas, right around the part where Judas is relevant, right? So I had all those verses written down already and all the thoughts that I had on it, and I thought I would run through those really quick and see if that uh, started any kind of discussion. And I'll go over the parts that are confusing to me and see what everybody thinks. So first, um, the three different lists of the 12 apostles. Now, Mark has the apostle Thaddeus, or the 12 disciples, right? So Mark has Thaddeus, Matthew has Labius, and then Luke has Judas, brother of James. Now, from what I've been able to tell, because all the other, all the other disciples are the same. It's just there's this the 12th disciple there is a little bit confusing the way all that was worded. So it looked like because of this, people eventually started saying Judas Thaddeus, or Thaddeus Judas, or Judas Labius, and so. But Matthew says Labius, I don't know if I'm saying that right, surname Thaddeus. So the one that Matthew and Mark are referring to has to be Labius Thaddeus. Right, so that means Judas is not the surname or the actual name. So that has always been a point of confusion for me. Now, Luke, says Judas, the brother of James. A lot of people have said that that's Jude, which makes sense because at the beginning of Jude it says Jude, the brother of James. And then in John, in chapter 14, it says Judas saith unto him, not Iscariot, Lord, how is it that thou wilt manifest thyself, and so on. So John also acknowledges the existence of this second Judas character. So I want to know what everybody else thought, and if you thought there was any scriptural reason to feel that Judas, the brother of James, is the same character as Labius Thaddeus, and if so, why are there three different names? And four, really, if you count Jude. So there'd be four different names for the same person. That's always been a point of confusion for me. I don't really care too much. It's something that I could point out during discussions about contradiction, but I don't really tend to point it out too often because it doesn't really make much difference to me. Okay, so the first role that Judas plays in all this is he visits the priests, right? So in Luke, it says then entered Satan into Judas, surnamed Iscariot. So this has been another point of there obviously is several times that the text claims that Satan entered Judas. Now, as a deist, of course, my thought is, how in the hell does the authors of Luke know when Satan entered Judas or what was said in his meeting? But I try not to think about that kind of stuff. So for me, I try to consider, well, maybe this is accurate. So you've got this first time that Satan enters Judas, referenced in Luke. Then Satan entered Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being in the number of the 12, and he went his way and communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray him unto them. And they were glad and covenanted to give him money, and promised and sought opportunity to betray him, so on and so forth. In Matthew, it just says he went to the chief priests. Matthew apparently is not given the information about when Satan enters him or not. And he goes unto them and says, what will you give me? The conversation's different, of course. Why wouldn't it be? The conversation's a little bit different. And of course, they agree on 30 pieces of silver and so on. Mark, it just says, and Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went unto the priests to betray him. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. So on and so forth. Okay. So that covers Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And Luke's, like I said, Luke was the only one that really records that. In John, it references the priests gathering and deciding to somehow convict Jesus or get him put to death somehow, but it doesn't really concern itself with whether Judas was there. So then you have the Last Supper, where Judas is there, and this has been a kind of a hot topic for me, because there are these two different ways that Jesus calls out Judas and tells him that he's the one that's going to defend, or that's going to betray him. So, and the other thing, which I didn't remember, so at the very beginning of John, before we get to this, John talking about whenever calling out Judas, in John it says, chapter 13, now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew it was the hour was come that he should depart, you know, all that language, supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. So it records the devil, maybe, depending on how you read it there, that happening at some point at supper. Then it has, he riseth from supper, laid aside his garments. And so I think the assumption here is that he went and did the foot washing and then came back to the table, because then after that is the whole discussion about Judas. Now, let's go back to John. Okay. So as when Jesus thus said, he was troubled in spirit and testified, verily, verily, I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me. Then the disciples looked to one another. They're all looking at each other, trying to figure out who did it, doubting of whom he spoke. Now there was one leaning on Jesus' bosom, one of the disciples whom Jesus loved. Now I assume this is John, you know, the authors of John attempting to brag on John. Who knows? Who knows? This may have been John just bragging on himself. Simon Peter therefore beckoned to him that he should ask who it should be of whom he spake. So Peter is asking John, saying, you ask Jesus who he's talking about. And Jesus answered, he it is to whom I shall give a sop when I have dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. And after the sop, Satan entered into him. Now, John already recorded that Satan had entered the heart of Judas before that, during supper, but I guess this would be a third time. I guess this would be a third time that Satan enters into Judas. Then said Jesus unto him, that thou doest, do it quickly. And no man at the table knew for what intent he spoke this unto him. Which is kind of odd, because John's right there. And Jesus said, I'm going to give him this, you know, whoever I give this to is going to be the one that betrays me. You know, gives it to Judas and says, go do what you're going to do. So after that, he gives it unto him. Jesus said unto him, for what intent he spoke. For some of them thought, because Judas had the bag, Jesus said unto him, buy those things which you need. I guess he's like the treasurer of the group, and he has money. Because he can't have the 30 pieces of silver yet, right? Because the priest just agreed to pay him when everything was complete. So I guess he's just holding everybody's money. Then Jesus said unto him, buy those things that we need, or that Jesus had said unto him, by so on. He then, having given the sop, went immediately out, and it was night. He then, having received the sop, went immediately out, and it was night. Now, that means John took off right then, or Judas took off right then. As soon as he's given the sop, went out immediately. So now, we look at Matthew's version, and if you're the type person that tries to make both events happen instead of choosing between the two, so we have to now assume that Matthew's version happened first, because Judas left out immediately after Jesus handed him the sop, right? Now when even was come, he sat down with the 12, and as they did eat, he said, Verily I say unto you that one of you shall betray me. And they were exceedingly sorrowful. And it sort of begins just like the same way the other story does. And began every one of them to say unto him, Lord, is it I? And he answered and said, He that dippeth his hand with me in this dish, the same shall betray me, and Son of God. So, all that stuff. Then Judas, which betrayed him, as it says, which he's not actually done the betrayal yet, but I guess that's what the idea is, which later betrayed him, answered and said, Master, is it I? And he said unto him, Thou hast said. Now that's fairly conclusive. If you're sitting at a table and somebody says somebody there is going to betray them, and then when Judas asks, he says, Thou hast said. It seems like he's clearly designating to everyone at the table, it's going to be him. It does not say that Judas got up and immediately left. So I don't really know what to think about the way those two stories are presented, because if Matthew's happened first, there's no reason to think that all the disciples wouldn't already know who was going to betray him. So then it sort of means that they wouldn't be confused the second time that he said it. Or you have to assume that maybe both are attempting to describe the same event. And if so, what do you think happened there? Okay, so let's go on to... now this one always confused me too. So after that, of course, after they leave, one of my favorite stories in the Bible is concerning Jesus is the Garden of Gethsemane. So he's at the Garden of Gethsemane, and he comes out, and we'll talk more about that later, because there's all kinds of stuff not involving Judas that confuse me around the Garden of Gethsemane. But in John, well, let's start with the other ones and then go back to John. So in Matthew, Judas he tells the guards, essentially, whoever I kiss, that's going to be Jesus. That he's going to give him a sign. So it says, Now he that betrayed him, let me see here. Yeah, saying, Whosoever shall I kiss, the same is he. Hold him fast. And forthwith he came to Jesus and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? So, and then you know how it plays out from there. Now in Mark, it says, let's see, Behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into sinners. Okay. Great multitude of sword and stabs, and the chief priests, the crowd, and the elders. He that betrayed him. Okay. He that betrayed him, giving them a token, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Take him and lead him away. And as soon as he was come, he goes straight away and saith, Master, Master, and kissed him. And they laid their hands on him and took him. And one of them stood by and drew a sword. The sword story is a little bit mixed up, but right now we're talking about Judas. Then in Luke, behold the multitude, and that which was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them, and drew near unto Jesus to kiss him. You assume this is for the same reason as Mark and Matthew. But Jesus said unto him. So this wording implies that he never kissed him. It just says, went near unto Jesus to kiss him, and then, but Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? Sort of like he, backed off. I was like, wait a minute. So the wording there suggests that he went to kiss him and didn't. because it has drew near unto Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said unto him. Anyway, then you have John, where there's no kiss involved. Everybody shows up, and Jesus goes out and asks them who they're looking for. It says, Jesus, therefore, knowing all things, whom seek ye? So let me drag over here. Went forth and said unto them, Jesus went forth and said unto them, whom seek ye? They answered him, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus said unto them, I am he. And Judas also, which betrayed him, stood with them. And soon he had said unto them, I am he. They went backwards and fell to the ground. Then asked he them again, whom seek ye? And, a little bit of odd stuff going on right there, but no kiss at all involved. So what do you guys think of the different descriptions of how Judas arrived with the soldiers? What do you think that somehow all of them happened, or that they're all describing the same single event, which would seem like it'd have to be? What do you think of those? So that's John 18, Luke 22, Mark 14, Matthew 26. All right, and then in Matthew, it records he went back and tried to return the silver. But the more interesting part here, and I don't really know what to think about this because the language used in Acts is a little illusory, I guess. I don't really know. That's the wrong word. Nebulous. It's kind of hard to nail down what they really could be talking about. But in Acts, it says, let's see. For he was numbered with us and had obtained a part of the ministry. Now this man, which I assume is, okay, so let me go back here a little bit. Men and brethren, the scripture needs been fulfilled, which Holy Ghost by the mouth of David spake before concerning Judas, which was the guide of them that took Jesus. So the Judas was the one that bringing all the soldiers to take Jesus. For he was numbered with us and had obtained part of this ministry. Now this man purchased a field with the reward of iniquity. With the reward of iniquity. So there's the one way to read this, one of the ways to read this is that he purchased a field with the silver that he was given. And then it says, and falling headlong, he burst asunder in the midst, and all his bowels gushed out. Kind of gross, but I don't really know what it's getting there. Falling headlong into the field that he purchased, if I understand it right. So then you go to Matthew, and it says, and Judas, which had betrayed him when he was there, repented himself, and he brought the 30 pieces to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned. I have sinned, that of which I have betrayed his innocent blood. And they said, what is it to us? And so on. He cast the silver at their feet. Didn't want it. But then it said that they used it. They took counsel and bought with them the potter's field to bury the stranger in, to bury strangers in. Wherefore that field was called the field of blood unto this day. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, and they took 30 pieces of silver, so on and so forth. So it seems there the priest bought a field, the potter's field, with the silver. And there's several verses in different parts of the Bible talking about buying stuff from the potter and things like that. But I'm trying to figure out what exactly happened with Judas here. Because Matthew says, where's it at? 30 pieces of silver, and departed and went and hanged himself. Right? So Matthew says that he went and hung himself right away. Acts describes this thing falling head first and bursting asunder. So what do you guys think happened there concerning Judas? So anyway, that's the information I put together a while back on Judas when I was trying to figure out a few things about him. it's just sort of interesting topic because I was real into the Garden of Gethsemane, so it means you have to start talking about Judas and learning what happened with him. So anyway, let me know what you think. I've always been curious to know people's thoughts about what they believe happened in all these scenarios. So let me know what you think.